So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution.
So it's turning out that labor unions had an undue influence on the opening of COVID. This is from the U.S. House of Representatives, and it says interim findings union officials wrote key portions of the Biden administration's school reopening guidance. And so we'll go into this because I think it's really interesting. It's not totally surprising. So, for example, we know that the Biden administration bailed out a union pension fund, which was going bankrupt because of poor management. And which is just, again, this is like a single union. It's not the government's, I don't know, pension fund or something like that. It's a single union who poorly managed their funds, and he gave them a lot of money, which is just is wild to me. It's not that's unprecedented. There's tons of unions whose pension funds were collapsed, and he gave nothing to them. It's not a normal practice. So what's pretty interesting is that the CDC released the first school reopening guidance in 2021, and generally the CDC was keeping it quiet, but instead, this time, they shared this strategy with the American Federation of Teachers, for Teachers, who is a political union with no scientific expertise, of course. And I do kind of understand the idea of getting stakeholders involved with these things. I do think that there is some value in getting stakeholders involved, but what about the parents? What about, I don't know, a poll of the parents? What about a poll of the students? Why specifically them? Why not individual teachers? I think that getting stakeholders involved in these plans is pretty good. The idea is pretty good. But why them? And we know how the bread's buttered, so that's why. But we'll talk about it. So after reviewing the draft, the American Federation for Teachers said that they wanted to install a trigger in the guidance that would cause schools to be closed automatically if COVID-19 positivity rates reached a certain level. And so as a result, thousands of schools and people were uneducated, and the rate of kids reading has drastically dropped. Their ability to comprehend serious books has dropped drastically after the pandemic. And also, let's be clear here: the private schools and homeschools all gained from this. So ultimately, the American Federation for Teachers will lose, right? Long term, this will be a detriment to them and their membership potentially, I guess. But so they had Dr. Henry Walka, who was a career CDC scientist, get on the stand and testify that this doesn't normally happen, which again, I actually think it's a decent idea if you're truly getting all stakeholders involved. But apparently, normally the CDC does not typically share draft guidance outside the agency for any reason. And so we don't know exactly why, because the lawyers for the Biden administration prevented the doctor from answering several questions that would have helped the committee understand why the CDC broke from past practice. But so the CDC said that the customary practice is to engage with the stakeholders, but but during that testifying by Walensky, she downplayed the degree to which the CDC gave the union access to the policymaking process. The CDC shared a draft to the union at least 2 weeks before finalizing the document, and the White House and CDC staff engaged in extensive discussions with the senior leadership about the contents of the draft guidance and included a willingness to accept near verbatim edits, which I think is really interesting. So the director of health issues for the union, which I'm curious about, that has to be a newly created position, because I don't know. So they had discussions, and they reviewed the copy and gave feedback. And again, that's not common. Why was this done? No one seems to know. Of course, again, this union has very tight financial ties with the Biden government, and so the Biden administration counsel had to instruct the doctor who was testifying not to answer the question. So there's a lot of this is not answered. All we know is that the union did line by line edits to the operational strategy on at least two separate occasions, Furthermore, we can see even greater involvement. This week, more information came out about the relationship, which included text messages where they found that there was a New York Times leak that seems at odds with the discussions that they were having. And then the discussion, what they were upset about is that all schools can provide in-person instruction through strict adherence to mitigation strategies. And they changed it, right? So directly after the text, the CDC released its operation guidance for schools, and it was changed to modified to all schools have option to provide in person instruction. And then later, like giggling schoolgirls, Weingarten texts a link to the union's press release on the guidance, which includes her glowing statement about the CDC. So she released a press release talking about her friend and how great it was, and that Weingarten statement included the agency, the CDC agency, for meeting fear of the pandemic with facts and evidence and producing an informed tactile plan. Well, literally, it was informed by you, or by the labor union, which does not have any scientific backing. And Walensky responds, "This gave me the biggest smile of the week. Thank you, friend. You literally, whatever. And so to add to that, the parents' rights group who did the FOIA request for this, the Fairfax County Parents Association, so they were not surprised at all. They were surprised, but not surprised by its content. It was clear from the start that the CDC was deferring to teachers' unions and not the science when it came to reopening the schools. And that's exactly true. And the children suffered as a result. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's a really frustrating situation to be beholden to these things. I absolutely,
What do you think
again,
about
as I've
today's
said,
video?
encourage
Please comment down
stakeholder
below.
involvement,
Like,
but not one
share, and
stakeholder.
subscribe.
Let's
It
get
really
everyone
helps
involved.
out. And
Let
I'll
me
see
know in
you
the
on
comments down
next
below.
one.
I'll
Bye,
see you on the next
guys.
video. Bye, guys.